10 years. That's 10 more years of wildlife being killed, 10 more years of streams being polluted, 10 more years of our carbon stores just going up in smoke, 10 more years of wonderful tourism and recreational opportunities being destroyed, and 10 more years, at least, of making our forests more fire-prone, less safe for communities that live nearby. I mean, we're told that these are so-called modernised laws, that wildlife protection is being given priority and that climate change is being taken into account. But if you read them, you will see that there are so many loopholes. But in fact, they're not loopholes. They are giant bulldozed clearings that basically, sadly, our wildlife are falling through, as they have for the last 20 years. There's no certainty of wildlife protection here. There are processes, there are words, there are promises to use reasonable endeavours that at the end of the day are absolutely hollow without political will to follow them through. And if these agreements, if these fine-sounding words, if at the end of the day they are breached, what's the sanction? It's unclear even as to whether legal action can be taken to hold the governments to account to these agreements. And meanwhile, we have got species that are critically endangered and hurtling towards extinction, like Leadbeater's possum, which is still waiting for a recovery plan. We've got greater gliders that have had almost a quarter of their habitat destroyed in last summer's fires. We've got the crustaceans, the freshwater lobsters, that our Environment Minister was actually tut-tutting about on radio this morning, but is unwilling to actually protect by stopping logging of their habitat. And what's even worse, the government actually announced just yesterday that they're actually giving the timber industry $15 million to facilitate the pillaging of these forests, the so-called salvage logging, the most destructive and damaging logging that can occur, that will set back the recovery of these forests for decades. In these regional forest agreements, we've got the promise of a so-called major event review that could take place after the fires, but we've got no certainty that it will take place and no legal mechanisms to ensure it does. We don't need rolled-over logging laws, outdated logging laws. We need forest protection. We need wildlife protection, from koalas to crayfish, from possums to potoroos. And we need all timber produced in Australia to come from plantations. We're currently at 88%. Come on, Australia, we can make it to the 100%. That's what Australians want to see occur. They want to stop the logging, the outdated logging of our native forests that belongs in the last century. And COVID-19 has shown us that what we once thought was impossible is possible, and that to protect our communities we have to change the way we do things. We need to learn that lesson with our forests too. We need to learn for our climate, that for our forests that we literally need to breathe, that we need to stop logging them. We must stand up to the bully boys of the native forest timber industry and invest instead in environmental rehabilitation, in recreation and tourism, in managing our forests, in dealing with weeds and pest animals and reducing fire risk. Instead of rolling over these outdated logging laws, that protecting our forests is the new direction that all Australians would applaud.